Top of the morning, YouTube. What it do? Quick question. Do your engine burn excessive amounts of oil? And the only fix is to rebuild it due to uh, stuck piston rings, and that's where it's burning the oil. Like this 2009 Toyota Scion that very much has this issue and had a recall on it. So if you happen to have an engine that's burning excessive amounts of oil, you can go back to one of my previous videos where you can actually see how you do basically an oil treatment. So I've been doing this treatment about 3 or 4 times, and I've been getting major results. And today I'm about to just dump the oil. I'm gonna keep the oil filter because I've changed my oil quite frequently, and just this is more of like a results video. So we're gonna start with what this engine was doing before I started the oil treatment. Toyota manufacturer, their qualifications for a bad engine that's having oil consumption issue is you top all your fluids off, you run the car for 1,000 to 1,200 miles, and then you check your dipstick. Now, if it's a quart low or over a quart low, then the engine is pretty much toast, or it's burning too much by manufacturers. Now, if it's burning less than that, then they consider that a good operational engine. This car was doing a quart low about every 400 miles. And so basically every time I went to go fill up the gas, I knew I pretty much was going to need oil. The only fix for this was to, take the motor, take the heads off, and, change the piston rings to the upgraded piston rings that Toyota improved on or whatever. So now that's the problem with this motor. Fix is a new motor, or rebuild this one, you're looking at, $3,000 around there. So I said, F it, of course, and let me try something else, because if I have to take the motor out, rebuild it, or probably put a new one, then let me see what I can do to this one. So I found a video on YouTube about, taking off your spark plugs. You put seafoam down in the cylinder head, let it sit, dry start the car to get the pistons moving, let it sit for hours, then dump your oil, blow everything out, dump your oil, and then voila. I also seen a video on like lawnmowers, and before and after they stick a bore snake down in the cylinders, so let you check it out. So it actually made sense. And then I seen another video of a guy actually doing it. So I did seafoam first. I think seafoam may dry up too quick. So then I thought about, something more on a heavy duty. So then I got to the point where, if I destroy this motor, so be it. It's going to need replaced, rebuilt, refixed anyway. I don't care what happens eternally. So I went to go get some Chem Dip from AutoZone. I bought the gallon size because I thought it was going to take a long time for this process. I bought the Chem Dip gallon size heavy duty parts cleaner. So then I started using that. The first time I put, I think, 2 ounces. I let the car sit for 2 hours. I dry started, and then I put 2 more ounces per cylinder. So a total of 4 ounces. That was probably a little too much. Then I let it sit for overnight. So, 6 hours or so after the first 2 hours. So about 8 hours total. The next day, I can look in the cylinder with seafoam was like pretty much dry. The car started right up as soon as you put your spark plugs back. But with the Chem Dip, it was still very, very wet when I looked down the cylinders, and I knew the car wasn't going to start. So I used the air compressor. I have a real skinny nozzle that I was able to stick down in the cylinders and just blow everything out. And as you can see, it's all a little bit wet right there. So then I start putting a towel over it. And I'm just blowing and blowing, and that took about a 30-minute process. Every time I look, it was still wet. So then I just said, you know what? Slap the spark plugs back in there. Ying, 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 ying. Car is not starting. Having a very, very hard time to start. So I take the spark plugs back out, blow it out again. Car wouldn't start again. So then I said, forget it. Ran back to the parts store. I slapped brand new spark plugs back in there. Still had a hard time to start, and then finally the car started. So eventually, if you put too much, you will have take a longer process of starting the car. So eventually, when I got the car started, closed the hood, just took off down the street, just went on a quick ride to kind of just get it to open up. I want the car to heat up and just blow everything out, just like how seafoam, if you use it for your intake and actually seafoam your car, when you start it, a bunch of smoke comes out of your tailpipe and you go on an aggressive ride, is what they say. So anyway, I come back, the car's, working fine, starting fine. And then the only way to check the car is by taking your mileage, and I'll show you guys that just in a second. And you can only drive the car, put miles on it, and then check your dipstick and see if you were improving. So now let's go in the car and I'll show you the before and after. All right, so before, my car was doing 400 miles for every quart low. And if you don't know what a quart low is on your dipstick, you got the high mark and you got the low mark. That increment is a quart, and it's pretty much, I think, every car. So if you're like halfway down, you can already say you're a half a quart low. So anyway, this car was doing a quart low, 400 miles. My gas mileage on the computer, my gas mileage with the computer says was, when I first bought this car, it was like 24, and then it just kept getting lower and lower and lower. Also, it went down to, at the lowest point, like 21.2 when I was really burning excessive oil. Also, which made me start this whole treatment, if I forgot to include, was I ran through cat. When I first got this car, dude said he put a new cat, and I see like he ended up getting me. But anyways, soon after I bought the car, probably like within 6 months, check engine light ended up being the cat. So I replaced the cat. 6 months later, the check engine light again. So I had to replace the cat again. And that's why I said I'm not about to basically to register my car every year, I need $300 to put on a new cat. So I'm not about to pay $300 a year. That's why I was like, let me destroy this motor, and we will just go from there. So back to this, I was getting 21.2 miles to the gallon. And so after I done the treatment, all right, see, there goes my mileage. So basically, trip A is how far I went on the oil per oil change, and then trip B is the oil filter, because I'm not changing the filter every time I do the oil change. I get like the 10,000 mile synthetic filter, and I've been changing those around the like 5,000 to 7,000 mile mark. And then trip A is the amount that I've drove without adding oil. And then trip B is the total amount of a trip on. Dang, this camera's tripping. Let me back up. But anyways, so now we're about to go check the oil. I'm gonna do an oil change. So on this oil, I have almost 2,200 miles, and I have not added oil since 2,200 miles. And now, if you guys can see, my car is averaging 24.9, basically 25 miles to the gallon combined. And every time I do an oil change, I reset that. And from my last treatment, I've done about 3 or 4 treatments. This number's been increasing, and I've been getting a major improvement on the oil, which I'm about to show you guys right now. But not only that I'm seeing it on the dipstick, the car is also telling me, because it's reading more miles to the gallon, which I'm saving big time. If you do the math on a full tank of gas, which this is like a 13-gallon tank, I went from 21.2 miles to the gallon. Now I'm at 24, so 21 and a half, 22 and a half, 23, 20 and a half, 24 and a half. That's 3 gallons more. This is a 13-gallon tank. So every tank, I'm getting an extra 36 miles to the gallon. I mean, yeah, I'm getting an extra 36 miles out of that tank, per tank, which adds up a lot, in the course of a small amount of time. And that's why they say your oil, when your engine's burning oil, you can burn through your cat, you'll get less power, and your gas per miles per gallon will go down. So, all right, so now I went from 400 miles per quart low. Now my car is, I've been checking the dipstick, but I wanted to retest it to see how much I can get out of it now. So every time I test it, I just let it chill, let it ride. I haven't been adding any oil. So it's almost 2,200 miles, and I have added no oil. Let's go and check the dipstick. Ah, crap. Yeah, sorry if this video is just kind of lengthy, but I think this is a game changer as far as saving money. Probably the biggest savings you can have if you have this situation. Definitely worth trying. I mean, less than $40 for that Chem dip and a little bit of time, and that's it. All right, so the dipstick is clean. We on 2,200 miles and haven't added a single drop of oil. Now we are pretty much a quart low, right at the quart mark. drove 2,200 miles and I'm a quart low. And that's what I call back to a good, more than a good running engine. And definitely did a 360 with this motor, brought it back to life, opened up those piston rings, saved $3,000. And now changing the oil, adding oil like pretty much never, almost. That's a normal car right there. If I can get 2,200 miles and it's a quart low, because you, in between oil changes, you always want to maybe add a half a quart, then you're like at a really good running engine. But this is more than acceptable right now. So yeah, check out my other video. You're gonna see me actually in the process of doing one of these treatments. But the biggest thing I recommend is having a air compressor, because you're going to need to clean out those cylinders. Or if not, whenever those cylinders dry is when your car is going to start, and you want that to happen the same day, not in a couple of days. So hit me up, and 86 got your fix, and we out. Like, subscribe, and we save money, y'all. Peace.